Kind of weird because, like with the whole mediumship thing, it's been really big over the years with a lot of well-known psychic and mediums contacting loved ones that have passed over.
Hmm.
And obviously, a lot of people from indigenous cultures, shamans and that, they believe that we can communicate with animals and we connect with the plants and nature. So it's kind of, it's natural for them. But all of a sudden now, through people like yourself, you're bringing that awareness into the West that we can communicate with animals and they do feel, don't they? So
Yeah, absolutely. I I strongly believe that this has been happening for thousands of years. People have always been able to communicate intuitively, which is what it is, with other species. We're animals ourselves, human beings, and you can communicate across any species. And it is interesting how animal communication is really, especially hitting the UK a lot right at the moment, and it has been sort of the last 5 years really coming into the media and people's awareness much more. And what I feel is that it surely has to be guided at some point by the universe, by a higher being.
yeah,
Which I wouldn't have said. I have to say, I would never have said that back in 2004, because back in 2004, I had no idea that animal communication existed at all. I was very, very skeptical about anything remotely like this,
yeah.
and a complete atheist as well. So I've come on a massive, massive journey from when I discovered that you can actually talk to animals and hear them back.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I know that you were a stage manager, wasn't you? Working in a theatre, you worked with Harold Pinter, and that really this kind of thing was so far removed from what you thought you'd end up doing. And then I think one day you wanted to learn to understand. Is it your dog Morgan?
Yeah,
Or
my
something
dog
like that?
Morgan. Yeah, absolutely. I was working in theatre for 15 years. That's what I trained for 2 years to do, and then I'd been working professionally for 15 years, working with Harold Pinter, Peter Bowles, Edward Fox, Alan Rickman. And then I adopted Morgan into my life, and he's the first dog that I've ever lived with. I've always been a massive cat fan. And when he came, I adopted him from the Mayhew Animal Home. And I think that all rescued animals need a bit of a settling in period, when they just, to help them understand that actually they are staying here, it's not a temporary arrangement, and that they are in a safe place where they're going to be loved. But over a bit of time, what I felt is that Morgan still had this feeling of sadness around him. And I just felt that intuitively, but of course at that point I would have never said I'm feeling this intuitively. I just thought, Morgan's sad, I wonder why he's sad. And then I was emailed, and invited onto an animal communication workshop, which I thought was just a PC way of saying, come and read your dog's body language.
Right. Yeah.
So I rocked up, and I couldn't believe it when the teacher started to tell us all these Dr. Dolittle stories, which is what I thought they were, about how he could talk to animals. And there were about 20 of us in the room, and 19 people were crying. And then there was me, sitting there, bolt upright in my chair, legs crossed, arms crossed. No doubt I've got a scowl on my face. I didn't believe a word of it. I was so sceptical. And then I challenged him at lunchtime as well, actually said, I've got an awful lot to do if we're going to actually be talking to animals this afternoon. I still didn't believe it, but I thought, well, I've paid my money now, so I'm going to stay till the end. And then we got partnered up, and we weren't working with real animals in the room at this point. We were working with photographs of animals that we'd taken along with our pets at home. And I was partnered up, and I had to guess what animal was in the photo of my partner. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous, it could be anything. But I just heard this name word in my head that said rabbit. And I turned it over, and it was a picture of a rabbit. And I thought, well, that's a lucky guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing,
I just completely discounted it. And then we all had to ask the animals in the photo, some questions. Everybody else is knuckling down, and then I'm sitting there, and my internal dialogue is a bit like, oh, I can't believe this. I'm meant to be talking to animals, but I'm not even talking to a real animal. I'm meant to be talking to an animal in a photo. And I started saying directly to the photo and said, this is ridiculous. Rabbits can't talk, let alone rabbits in a photo. And then what I heard in my head was kind of like my own inner voice, but with a different tone to it and a completely different attitude. And it just said, well, who the hell do you think is listening to you?
And it felt like it didn't feel like it come from your own thoughts, like completely external.
It felt like it was external because there was such a character behind it. I still didn't believe at all at this stage. But what I did is I thought, oh, well, I'm going to give this a go because maybe there's something in it. So I said to the photo of the rabbit, I said, what's your favourite food? I heard in my mind green leaves. And who's your favourite friend? Have you got a best friend? And I saw a particular coloured rabbit. What do you like to do? What's your favourite activity? And then I saw a sofa and I thought, well, that's just bizarre. That can't be right. And then we had to give feedback in front of everybody about the stuff that we'd received. And I thought, well, why not? I'm sure I've made it all up, but I'll just say it anyway. And so I started going through my list of things, and my partner, the rabbit's guardian, started to confirm them and said, yeah, that's his favourite food. Yeah, he is bonded with a rabbit that colour. I've got lots of rabbits that only one that colour, and anyone that knows anything about rabbits, once they're bonded, they're bonded. And there were a few things I got wrong. I didn't get everything right. But when it came to the sofa, I said, why is he picturing a sofa? That can't be right. And she said, well, actually it is, because this rabbit, what he loved to do is he loved to sit on the sofa every Saturday night and watch TV. And his favourite programme, believe it or not, is You've Been Framed.
Yeah.
So it was right. The picture was right,
Yeah. So basically from there, it gave you the confidence or the impetus to sort of look into it a bit further.
Yeah, what happened is I had a massive sort of, oh my God, what just happened moment, like I think anybody would. I can't believe, part of the logical side of me went, I can't believe that happened. But then the other side of me went, but what happens if that just did happen? That opens up my eyes to a whole new way of seeing the world. So I went on a second course, and I found I could do it again. And it was actually on that second course that I had what I called my light bulb moment, where I went, oh my God, this is what I'm meant to be doing for the rest of my life.
Of course, once you realise that they can communicate with such coherent language that, I read it in your book, you're saying they opened up all of these bit of sadness in you because you realised all the pain and the hurt that they feel when there's animals that are being experimented on, and the ones that are not treated so nicely, because they might not be able to speak, but they're just as sentient as the rest of us, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. What's great about animal communication is that it's there to help end suffering, so whenever I can, not just with my clients' animals that I'm helping, I will try and communicate with other animals who I see are suffering and try to ease their load a little bit, But it does make you suddenly think of, vivisection and just animal testing and all these things. When there are rabbits in laboratories being tested on, they do have feelings, of course, and they do think and they do know what's going on.
One of the stories that I found really inspirational in the book is that there was, I think there's a collie, the guardian was Mike, and I think the dog had something wrong with his legs where he couldn't really run. It was paralysed almost.
Yes,
and,
he was paralysed. The dog's called Mono. Yeah, he had an accident, and the vets gave him a very sort of grim prognosis where they were saying that he'll never walk again. So, of course, it was suggested that he was put to sleep. But Mike absolutely adores his dog and had been going through a rough time himself and felt that his dog pulled him through it, and so he wasn't willing to give up on Mono quite so easily. And there was a plea where a friend of Mike's asked for help, and I just felt really drawn to it, and so I made contact and said, if you'd like some help, I'm willing to give it a go. There's obviously no charge in this because I'm approaching him, He's never even heard of animal communication. And I started to communicate with Mono, and he was able to tell me exactly where he was lying. He was lying on the sofa. He was able to tell me he was lying on his left side. He told me that Mike was sleeping on the floor beneath him, and that he was in a blue room. All the walls were blue. And so we had some details like that Mike could verify to prove that I was really connected and really listening to what Mono had to say. And then Mono was able to say what he needed, what he needed for his recovery. And he was ever so positive. And he said this one sentence to Mike, which was, I will be the dog I used to be. And it was over all the weeks and the months of Mono's recovery that this sentence really gave Mike